Hello everybody, I'm Jim Durrett, Montgomery County Mayor, and just welcome you to another one of our series of shining the spotlight where the spotlight really needs to be shined. So many times the mayor's office gets all the credit or sometimes all the blame. We're not going to do any blaming today, but I really wanted to just shine the light on people that make county government work every day and make this community the great community that it is. And so today, I have with me the Director of Medical Services, Emergency Services.
Emergency Services.
Well, I was close. Director of Emergency Services,
That's
Jimmie
good.
Edwards.
How are
Well,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So let's start off with just a little bit of personal history about Jimmie Edwards. I don't want to talk about your job or anything. I want to know where you're from, your family. I want everybody to know just a little bit more about Jimmie Edwards.
Oh my. Yeah, so I was born at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Awesome.
So in the old hospital. And I was an Air Force brat for a bit. Moved to Warsaw, Indiana. Lived in Ipswich, England for a couple of years. Goldsboro, North Carolina. And then in 1968, settled in the metropolis known as Henrietta. This small community on the outskirts of Montgomery and, well, it's shared by Montgomery and Cheatham County, raised on a small dairy farm, raised actually to be a blacksmith, shoeing horses and working with metal and of course helping on the farm. And then eventually went to college. College did not turn out to be my cup of tea. I was a music major originally in college, and I felt led or called away from doing that or didn't want any part of that, and I wound up in EMS somehow. So this is about 40 years ago. So I'm a paramedic, an EMT, a registered nurse. I've graduated from Volunteer State Community College, Austin Peay State University, Trevecca Nazarene University, and Andersonville Theological Seminary. I am happily married to Charlene. We have 4 daughters, Rachel, Rebecca, Jamie, and Jessica. We have 6 grandchildren. Don't test me on the names quite yet. and 1 on the way.
Awesome.
So that's kind of
Awesome.
in a nutshell.
Well, I think your wife and I were in old Clarksville Memorial Hospital on Madison Street at the same time when we were both born.
Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct.
Yes.
We're not going to say what year, but we'll say in the month of July.
Thank you.
That you all.
Your wife will appreciate
Yeah, I
that a
appreciate
lot
it.
more than I
It's-
will,
it's,
because it doesn't matter. I don't care if people know how old I am. So talk about, Jimmie, talk about your career before you came on board with Montgomery County, and then talk about what your career's done since you've been at Montgomery County.
Sure, absolutely.
Because it's changed.
Yes, sir, it has. So I had absolutely no intention of working for EMS, and it just happened. It was a matter of being in a small community, and someone just approached me and said, "Hey, you're a farm boy. Can you drive an ambulance?" And I said, "Well, if that's steering wheel, I can drive it." So there you go. So I started out as an ambulance driver some 40 years ago. And EMT school back in the day was free, so I thought, well, that'd be interesting. I'll take this EMT class. And what emerged out of that was this fascination with being able to help people, not just navigate traffic
Right.
and get to and from the scene, but it was a fascination and attraction to help people when they were in their worst moment. So I worked as an EMT at Houston County EMS, and a brief period of time at Cheatham County EMS in anticipation I could get on Montgomery County EMS that at the time had we would consider a premier service back in the day. It was here at Montgomery County that actually Montgomery County paid for my paramedic school.
Awesome.
And during paramedic school was I would say great awakening that I really began to appreciate the significance of what we were doing in the pre-hospital setting. So, that led a few years after getting my paramedic, I was invited to become the chief of Cheatham County EMS. I left Cheatham County to go back to college and finish my nursing degree. program director of a community college at Volunteer State in Gallatin, Tennessee. Then went on to work as a state consultant and on the emergency medical side of the house for the Department of Health, and then eventually offered a job to come back home, and offered an interview to come back home as the EMS chief. So after spending several years of traveling and consulting all across state Tennessee, to have an opportunity to come home and practice the tools that you've put in the toolkit was an opportunity I couldn't say no to.
Yeah. So when did you become EMS chief for Montgomery County?
2010.
2010.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yeah, October the 3rd, 2010.
Yeah. A lot of changes in that world since 2010, really. But so you've been with the county since 2010?
So yes, sir. Well, I worked.
But you worked
Previously,
prior.
yes,
Yeah.
7 years previous.
So total service with the county?
18 years.
18 years. Awesome. And then I think maybe 2015, 2016 is when you became Director of Emergency Services?
Something changed, yes, sir. Someone said the Mayor Durrett, he said that he would like to see improved high-level communications between all emergency services and look at a new era of collaboration. And yes, sir. So it was a new thing, a new title, and we're beginning to see it emerge in other areas of the country. People in the public safety director, emergency service director.
Yeah, well, and I'll talk about some of that stuff in a minute, because there's a lot of things out there on the horizon that I think that the general public would be interested in. But I want to just ask you some other questions that.
Yes, sir.
So what you had this calling for EMS, and so I guess that calling is really what led you to the government service. I mean, because you could do that kind of work in the private sector.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
no doubt could have been private, but in the beginning, it was in the government sector: Houston County, Cheatham County, Montgomery County, and within Middle Tennessee, it is no doubt the largest sector that's operating emergency medical services happen to be county governments.
Yeah.
So I didn't set out to work for government, but I did settle in to working for government.
Yeah. So as Director of Emergency Services for Montgomery County, what's a typical day look like for you?
24 hours. And that's not.
Well, that's everybody's typical day.
Right. Yeah, but you never know. I mean, it could be the phone call at midnight, or the request for services at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I don't wish to give that a short answer, but it is not a typical office day. But the day starts with my devotional, my prayer life, kind of setting the tone for what the day is going to be, and then when I come to work, it's a matter of I may be at Emergency Management Agency, and we may be working with something related to volunteer fire responses, or I may be at 601 Dunlop Lane working with EMS. So the day is, we'll say, a ballet between planning, budgeting, response, and then recovery. So it's a day fully loaded.
And then you do all that during the week, and you still preaching on Sundays?
I'm still preaching on Sundays.
Awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah, so while I'm not getting ready for whatever emergency services has to bring, I tell everyone I'm writing a 22-page essay so I can deliver it in 30 minutes on a Sunday morning at McAdoo.
And still do some music stuff?
Still picking, still playing. I know you have my picture on the refrigerator.
Yeah, we do.
Right.
You were. I won't say what you were at. That photograph, so it's dated a few years, and your hair wasn't quite as gray, and I won't go any further than that.
So still playing bluegrass music,
Does that, and obviously going to seminary and being in the Word, like you're in the Word,
yes, sir.
I'm sure that's a big reliever of the stresses And I don't wanna go real deep into the stresses of the EMS world or the emergency services world, first responder world, but I'm sure that really kinda helps you get your mind off of that.
Matter of fact, when you get to that point that you know that you can't handle everything on your own and you have to have somebody redeem you, save you,
Yeah.
and knowing that that's the truth, it is very comforting. And at the same moment, it reinforces, you know, you gotta love God, you gotta love neighbor, regardless of how that neighbor
Yeah.
might describe their
Yeah.
emergency event. So it's
Exactly.
very helpful in navigating all the crazy time
Yeah.
frames, all the crazy times,
And then,
nights, weekends, and holidays.
yeah, and then the music and the picking and stuff, that's just more therapy.
That's release.
Awesome.
That's what it is.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Talk about, and we're gonna interview Bill Webb, who's the chief of EMS,
Yeah.
but let's talk about some of the challenges that you see in the emergency services world for Montgomery County, short-term and long-term.
Short-term challenges are actually logistical issues. We're having a very difficult time getting in some supplies and such that are critical. An example of that, the number one medication we use for a patient in cardiac arrest is epinephrine. So the means in which we give it, at the dilution that we give it, it's on back order.
Wow.
So I'd say short-term logistical issues. Long-term is workforce.
Yeah.
It is finding people that, or motivating people actually, that'll take the EMT program or the advanced EMT program, the paramedic program, and be willing to get into the profession. On another note, not so I'm just talking about EMS, I would say fire protection. The county has all volunteer fire service, and I believe that we're over this 50,000 population mark, which statistically indicates the community starts calling for a paid fire response. So that'll be a challenge over the next few years, figuring out how to navigate that, how to plan for that, and just honestly how to pay for that.
How to pay for it without it, and we've had conversations this week about that.
Yes.
I mean, and those are conversations that have been going on for a while, because I for one, I believe that we're at the point that, with all due respect to our volunteers, and they are awesome, and I mean, they are truly, truly awesome, but with all due respect to them, we're at a point, and we're a big enough community outside of the city limits of Clarksville, that we need 24/7 fire service.
I agree, and I think talking about it frequently and keeping it on the radar, on the forefront, is how we'll get it accomplished. You know, we did the same thing with the EMT program at Austin Peay State University.
Right.
We talked about it and we went after that for 10 years, and the answer was no for 10 years. At least 10 times the answer was no.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the answer was yes. And we have our EMT program associated with Austin Peay. So I think just staying at it and keeping it on the mantle, keeping it in front is how we get things done.
Well, and you know, when you talk about staffing, you know, I think we see that in the sheriff's department. We
Yes.
see it obviously in EMS, but you know, I'm really proud of some things that we've done, that the county commission has done, to address the pay.
Yes.
And I think we're up there where we're competing now with all the big cities, in which we need to be. But you know, we've done some innovative things too with some part-time positions, and I think we're starting to see some more people come into EMS. And but it's not only Montgomery County. It's a nationwide issue.
It is a nationwide issue, it's a Tennessee issue, it's a local issue, and I think doing things like you and the county commission taking on the prospect of let's get competitive with the larger players, let's do some different things in scheduling, like Chief Proctor and Chief Webb have put together, and the county commission passing a new pay proposal for EMS, launching an EMT program, I think are all these multifaceted approach to meet the needs or the demand
Right.
of well, what happens in EMS is turnover.
Yeah. And so I think there's 4 bills that we're kind of helping push the state legislature that will hopefully help with this shortage of EMTs and AEMTs and paramedics in our region, in the state of Tennessee especially. But I know we've been very involved in that process, and you've been very involved in that process. So let me change gears on you a little bit. So you're interviewing somebody to come to work for wherever, EMA, EMS, or whatever. What do you tell them about why they should come to work for Montgomery County government?
Oh, if you wanted to come to work for Montgomery County government, I would tell you that we have the state-of-the-art equipment, and that we have state-of-the-art protocols that allows you to manage patients without spending the clock on the radio or the telephone to get those orders to take care of that patient. And that our sole mission statement at EMS is that we deliver exceptional patient care every time, and then we in turn, along with county government, take exceptional care of our employees. And that would be my sales pitch.
Awesome. So you leave here and you bump into somebody in the parking lot and they ask you for directions, and you're the kind of person that will engage somebody in a conversation. You're not gonna just say, I'll go up here and take a left and go down 3 blocks and take a right and you're there. You're probably gonna engage them. You find out this is a couple and they're gonna move to Montgomery County, or they're thinking about moving to Montgomery County. What do you tell them why they should move to Montgomery County?
I think the first comment I would make, just because I'm that kind of guy, is I'm gonna say, well, quit thinking about it and let's go ahead and do it. So let me tell.
I like that.
Yeah. So let me just tell you, the attributes of. So I would share positive attributes of the community, from schools to Austin Peay State University to Fort Campbell. I would everything from our activities on the Cumberland River. Our places to meet and greet and eat, and then activities like the ice skating rink and the impact that's going up and the changes that are happening in leadership are making things happen in Clarksville, Montgomery County. And I would say, and if you're looking for something outside of that, it's 45 miles to Music City Central.
Yeah,
all right?
amen.
All right,
Amen.
and it's 45 miles to living quietly on the lake if you want to go take a weekend at the lake.
Yeah.
So hunting, fishing, dancing, singing, drinking, eating, you're here, quit looking.
All right here.
Yes.
Yeah. COVID.
Oh.
Word I don't like to use. But go back to really probably January of 2020. I mean, I know you and I had lots of conversations about it before it was ever on the, it was on the radar, but not on the radar like it got on the radar. It was a little blip out there, but the whole time it was really more than a blip. It was big, and it was for real. And so I think maybe in January, EMS and all of our emergency services people started going to really to their epidemic plan and started following those protocols. And I don't think a lot of the public knows that.
Right. Yes, so you're correct. So as soon as we started receiving information, confirmed information, we began to, you don't want to take the pandemic plan off the shelf, but we took it off the shelf and dusted it off and said, okay, how do we tweak this and navigate this to fit? Because you have a plan, but you don't know if it's going to work until you engage the enemy. And there were a lot of politicized things coming out about the pandemic, and so we're just trying to navigate what things were true and factual and actual, and then we would help give the government, the mayor's office, and the city mayor's office, advice on how we best navigate it.
And I'm sure in your career that you've seen a lot of different collaboration and stuff with interagencies and stuff like that. But I think if somebody asked me, one of the things that helped us through it was what we ended up doing, we called it the COVID call.
Right.
It was every Monday.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I would say that is probably an example that could be shared nationwide on how a community, not an I or a me, it's a how will we put together a plan to collaborate with all our partners in the community, from Fort Campbell to Austin Peay State University to Nova Healthcare, leaders in government, leaders in health, having a virtual meeting every Monday that kept everybody up to speed, and everybody at least singing out of the same hymnal, maybe not the same hymn, but everybody else kind of on the same page, and kept everybody situationally aware. There were things that we learned from our partners that we weren't doing, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I think it proved to be effective for the community.
Well, and, you know, we did one of these series with Joey Smith, and the health department, they're state employees, and so they're not a county agency. But I think from those calls, like when the testing site here started getting overrun by having the sheriff's department, the police department, and Clarksville Fire and Rescue having y'all on the call. And so we pivoted from Veterans Plaza, we pivoted out to Civitan Park. And then there was we had this one day that a thunderstorm shut it down basically, and we have all these people in line wanting to get tested. And I don't think we'd gone to vaccinations then, but we realized that, hey, we have to have a place that we can actually do this inside. And so through that whole group, it wasn't me, but it was you and others, people with the city and everybody else, that we ended up going out to those Sears building, and we had basically a climate controlled testing site and vaccination site.
Right, they work well, and it's a key that it was a we and not an I.
Exactly.
Is that we came together and made it work and made it happen and did so in short order. Yeah, but you know, the day that it shut us down from the testing, it blew away the site in Gallatin, in Sumner County. So that was a lesson for us, is that we don't want to be out in that sort of weather, and we need to be inside. So. And
you know, I think, Jimmie, one of the things that came from that, I mean, even the public sector was involved, because the people that own Governor Square Mall, I mean, it was a partnership, a true partnership. And then out of all that, Austin Peay grew their site.
Right.
And that really took a lot of burden off of the state site here. So lots of good things.
Amen.
What would you say is the biggest thing you learned from COVID?
The largest lesson learned from COVID-19 is that we have to collaborate. We have to work together. We can't allow ourselves to become isolated or an island, and we all have to be game on. And short of advice like wearing a mask, keep your hands off your face, wash your hands frequently, and those things that have been touted. So the next thing, because there will be a next thing. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or today, but there will be a next thing. And I think the lessons learned is that we continue to collaborate and work well together, and that we work through those experiences, because we reviewed those experiences and those challenges, and we have a good idea of what worked and what didn't.
Awesome. So would you recommend a life of government service to somebody?
You know what happens, in my case, it was an unintentional. I was milking cows and shoeing horses. It was absolutely unintentional. But what you discover when you land here is that you work with a bunch of people that are all in.
Yeah. That
they care, because you don't do these things to become wealthy. You do these things because you're called.
Right.
And you're called and you're led to do them. And I think what you find out is you're working with a bunch of folks that are just superstars in their own profession, their own field. And they love taking care of others.
Amen. What do you think a significant improvement that you've made since you've been in your current role?
I'd hate to say I made any. I'd have to say that we have been able to plan for things and forecast. When I say things, it's everywhere from a county fire response all the way to growing to EMS. So it's not. I can't really say any one thing, except the voices of all those agencies are now able to speak as one.
Yeah.
So that's the largest accomplishment. We can look back and see ambulance tracking and a CAD system, and there's so many things that have happened over the last 12 years that I'd have to point to collaborative, one voice, unified, and successful.
Yeah. Awesome. Last question. What do you think's been the most gratifying experience that you've had since you've worked for Montgomery County?
Gratifying experience. I would have to say, and this may sound small on the scale, is that so many people have my phone number that in the middle of the night, weekend or holiday, or during a ball game, if they've got an issue, they'll call me.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most gratifying thing, is that, if people don't respond to you, or don't give, or don't care, or don't help, you're not gonna get a call. So that's the most gratifying thing to me, is that reciprocation, that they know that I'm gonna take the call, they know I'm gonna answer the response, they know I'm gonna give what best advice I can, given the circumstances that I have, and I'm grateful that they think of me in such a way.
Yeah.
So,
well,
that's the only I think.
Well, that's not an I thing. I think that's a very humble answer, and it's it has to be gratifying that you know that if somebody's out there in need, you're not bashful about sharing your cell phone with anybody, and they know if they call you, you're going to respond. And so I think that speaks volumes of who you are, what you're about, where your heart is, and I know that you have a passion for what you do, and what you do is take care of people. So
yes,
you have a passion for people, and that's one of the things I admire about you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it. Unless you got anything else you want to say.
I want to shake your hand.
Well, I'm going to shake your hand.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Mayor.
Thank you, man.
More than you
Yeah.
know.
Thank y'all.